Hi, great to see some of you starting to race now. So I thought I'd put together a video to accompany a document that I'll send around the group, all about race planning and race execution. What is a race plan? What can you put in it? Key thing on this one, personalize it. So this is all about your race and the considerations for yourself. Right, race plan. So I'll send the document round, and inside it, it gives you an explanation. I'll just summarize it for you and give you a bit of a feel or an emphasis for where I think you should focus your attention. So made up broadly, in my mind, of three elements in your race plan. So the first one is about your race goal and your pacing strategy associated with that. So depending on your experience, depending what you want from the event, you will adapt your pacing strategy to make it more or less successful. For example, you're going out for your first long distance event and your strategy might be completion. You're going to take a race strategy and a pacing into that, an intensity level to maximize your chances of completing that. So it could be a run walk approach for the run leg. It could be a ceiling on your watts for your bike leg. It could be a conservative swim and thinking about space, some good feet to get onto, but not overextending yourself. So all of these would feed in. At the other end, if you're doing a very high intensity event or a long distance event where you're really looking to compete and set PBs, you will take a much higher risk that you might not achieve that, and you might become quite far off. The higher the risk in terms of the intensity you're going to put in, the greater the chance that you might push yourself a little bit far and have more negative consequences. So depending what you want from your race outcome and your race goals, you adapt your pacing strategy, which is first element. So I've got some notes in here. Um, Part of that strategy, so it's all about how you decide on the intensity with which you're going to execute it. So that can vary on other environmental factors as well and on the course. So depending on the heat on the day, you might adapt the intensity. Depending on how hilly it is, you might change your profile of intensity through the hills. Depending if it's a sea swim or a river swim, all these will feed into that intensity and some of the ways you could measure that intensity. So for some, it'll be perceived effort, particularly on the swim. For others, they might use heart rate. You could use power on the bike. You could use pace off your watch for when you're running on the run leg. So you can adapt that. You could use heart rate as well on the run. So it depends on the type of course and what you're trying to achieve. If you're more conservative, you might look at a heart rate ceiling and stay underneath it, or a watt ceiling. If you're going for a specific time, you're more likely to use specific target paces. So I want to run sub 4 minutes per kilometer to get a specific outcome time. Not quite irrespective of the terrain, but you know that that's the goal you're going to have to set yourself. Be willing to adapt this. So go in with a baseline, adapt it. So if it turns out to be a hotter day and you're starting to feel a bit there, maybe you pull it back. Adapt it with your race objective in mind. Rather than going in with nothing and just winging it, go in with a baseline and then adapt it. Also be aware other people in an event will influence you. Use those influences to your advantage. So if someone is running past you and you're struggling to hold pace, they're going past, duck in behind them and use them to pull you along mentally to help you succeed in that pace. Likewise, if you've got a more conservative approach and someone comes past you, maybe on the swim, just leave it, let it go. Don't get involved in a tussle with them. Don't try and stay on someone on the bike with it, depending on drafting, within the draft legal limits. Um, if they're pushing it too hard, so use others to help you in your execution of your personal strategy. Okay, that's pretty much pacing. Leverage the tables that are in your personal Excel sheet to create your little pacing, pacing plan. Inside of that, you'll see one thing which I think is super, super useful. When you set your pacing strategy, choose a range. Don't choose a single number. You can have a single number for a target, but set an upper limit and set a lower limit. This will really help when you then combine all the times that with that upper and lower limit and the target, you can then see the relative balance of putting more effort into one discipline or less effort into one discipline. What is that going to result in terms of execution time in total? And it can help inform you as to where you want to balance your efforts and where you want to take risk, where you want to be more conservative, and those trade-offs, right? That's pacing and race kind of goals or race execution. Next one is logistics. It's a big catch-all category. Inside of here is nutrition. Nutrition will be based on environmental factors such as temperature, how much fluid you want to take on, how much you sweat, so do sweat tests beforehand, what you like, what's on the course, the distance you're going to be doing. So all these feature in. So there's a sheet available to you in the toolbox where you can take a copy and create your own personal nutrition plan. Shorter races, sprint races, almost nothing. Longer races, a very, very key foundation of your ability to execute a good race will be based on your nutrition, particularly on the bike. What you take on, how frequently, and keeping your energy levels topped up throughout the bike so that you can hit a good run without being overly depleted when you start the run. There's a timeline as well available to you, which is like this guy. That way right. Again, depending on your race, this can be more or less involved. At the shorter end, local race, key probably is working back from your start time, your warm up, your travel time, the time you leave the house, any meals, probably what time you set your alarm. You can go back further, what time therefore you want to get to bed. You can go back further, so you can go back quite far. Big international races. I think I've got this one going back 2 or 3 weeks beforehand, which includes ordering last minute nutrition to make sure you've got all that available for you, and you can step through and see it all. It's fairly detailed. You can go to another level of detail again, which is your transition setup. So this doesn't include how you set up your transition. Some people like to have that as a little checklist for their how they lay things out and tick them off. Talcum powder my shoes, elastic my bike shoes onto my bike. Make sure you select the bike gear appropriate to coming out of transition and what the ground's like. A tick list to go through walk-in transition, so they actually have more detail in the transition areas. This is particularly important for shorter, faster races where transition is a really key element in your total time. You can be very competitive in transition and make up quite a few places. Last one, and it's on the other side of this, is a kit list. So within the logistics, have a kit list available to you, and again, adapt this. There's a default one which I use, which is in the toolbox. Take a copy of that, adapt it however you wish. If there's things that you like to have, if there's stuff I've got in there that you'll never use, take it out, and then have yours, put some notes on it, tick things off, and then continue to refine it. Okay, so that's the logistics side. Last one on the race plan is mental preparation. So 2 elements to the mental preparation. The first one is mental challenges. So things that you've scrunched up, those concerns, you've shoved them in the cupboard and quick closed the door and thought, I'll deal with that another day. Open the cupboard, let them tumble out, pick them up, start to look at them. So it could be a mechanical. I'm super nervous about mechanical. Work out a strategy for it. So there's the practical strategy of making it less of an issue by practicing, which you do in your rehearsals. But mentally, when, for example, you get a puncture, depending on if you get a puncture, I'm sure when it will happen at some point in your cycling. When you get that, how are you going to react? So there's the practical and the mental. So you'll have that moment as your tire goes down. It might be sudden, in which case pull off safely. It might be slow, in which case you'll be like, where's the best place to try and change this? Okay, you could And if it matches your race strategy, call it a day. Just say, you know what, this isn't, I don't need this race. It's just another race. I can't achieve what I wanted to achieve. Or if it's maybe a long race where the time is less of a percentage, the time to fix would be less of a percentage of your overall race time, or it's something where you absolutely are committed to finishing it, or there's other objectives you could get out of the race. So it's not all or nothing. You could repair and take an approach that's like, okay, plan A's gone out the window, quickly switch to plan B, and it could be, for example, hit lap on your Garmin or on your cycle computer to time how long you're not racing for and you're repairing, so not actively racing. Give yourself a mental number, say it's 10 minutes to change your puncture. You say, right, next 10 minutes I'm fixing this. It might be 15, it might be 5, it might be 2. Get yourself to a nice safe place, get your head together, execute the repair, get back into the race, and then work on your plan B. So that plan B might be, I'm now refreshed, I can give this more beans for the rest of the bike, and you look at having, for example, higher power output than you had in the first half, or you might semi-scrub the bike and go and execute a PB in the run. So if it's an Olympic distance, you might go and run a 10k PB and say, right, I'm not going to scrub the whole race. I'm going to scrub the bike, but I'm going to really execute now and focus on the run. So get some fluid in you, take some energy on board and say, right, I'm going to try and PB my 10k. So that would be one approach to something that initially looks like, ah, man, disaster. Actually, by having some mental strategies about what you're going to do in certain events, you can go and execute a plan B. Other mental strategies could be someone getting into your space, in the swim, on the bike, someone like on your shoulder in your run. What are you going to do about those scenarios that evoke some emotional reaction which is negative from you? I would advise in your race week, do some yoga. At the end of your yoga session, keep it short. Just lie on the mat with a little pad next to you. Try and unearth those quiet voices. Get a bit of a plane, we don't normally have them. Unearth those quiet voices of concerns. Write down what it is. Write down an approach to take on it and some alternatives. On a more positive note on mental strategies, think of your cues. So there'll be key elements in the race. So it might be each discipline, it might be part of a discipline, going up some key hills, the start of the swim, coming out of the swim, the transition period from bike to run. Think of a cue that evokes the right response from you. So it could be an emotional response, or it could be a logistical, technical response. So it could be something to do with a smooth pedal stroke. It could be relaxing your shoulders down so you're not all tense on your bike. It could be an emotional one on the last third of the run. Bury yourself, empty the tank. You know, it might be a mental image of someone. It might be a mental image you have of yourself. So you can put this in different places to trigger this. You can hold it mentally, you can visualize it for the race, or you can put little triggers and reminders. The inside of your wetsuit, write a little message where the name tag is. You could put something in it, you know, a little post-it note as you open it out your bag and think, yeah. You can write it on your hand for the run. You can put it on your water bottle. Quite famous, Christy Wellington has, she writes out on her water bottle a mantra that she uses when she's on her bike to get the best from her. Rudyard Kipling poem that you can look up and see what she uses. You can get transfers for your bike. You can put something on your top tube. You can get an engraved headset disc cover spacer on the top of your bike. All of these are all about something that evokes the right response in a really short, simple way, so that when the oxygen's not in your brain so well and you're really digging deep, you've got the right response, either technical or emotional, that reminder. Right, that's it. It's quite a lot. It's 15 minutes, this video. So I'll send these documents out, or I'll send a race plan document out. You've got the other ones in the toolbox and in your personal. Any questions or thoughts, or if you want to share your own experiences of race planning, then definitely share that in the group. And when you've executed your race, take the time to go into your race plan and write your race debrief. Things like how breakfast went, things you would want to repeat, things you don't want to repeat, lessons you've learned. These are super important, and do it for your benefit for your next race. Reread it. So take the same race plan out, adapt those elements, and then have a look back. And it's really, really powerful and super enjoyable to reread your race diary almost of what you were like after your last race, and you can look back on it season on season. It's a great document to have. Okay, that's us. Hope this was useful. As always, feedback very welcome, and have a good race, everybody. Thanks.